My name is Jeffrey Epstein, and I am doing the Google autocomplete interview.
Let's begin. Who Jeffrey Epstein in the search engine? Here we go. Who was Jeffrey Epstein? Wow, I love this question. I was definitely one of New York's most famous financiers. Maybe the most famous that ever has been, or ever will be. I ran some very, very important people's finances, such as the CEOs of Victoria's Secret and other of some of the most wealthy and powerful individuals in the world. I was worth what? $570 million by the time I passed away? At least that. The number is probably closer to $1 billion. I had humble origins though, more humble at least. I wasn't always this incredible. I started my career teaching at a Manhattan preparatory school, and let me tell you, the children who went there were definitely the children of elites. But it was probably the most important job I had ever secured. One of the parents provided me with valuable lifelong connections with bold-faced figures. I began working on Wall Street pretty quickly after that as an investment banker, until I opened my own firm, J. Epstein & Co. Only for people who had assets of over $1 billion, of course. Yeah, it was definitely an impressive portfolio that I had. I met some of my closest friends through connections from my banking career, such as Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew. I hung out with elites. So yes, I would classify myself as rich and powerful as well. That's who Jeffrey Epstein is. Alright, so the next question. In the search bar we have, what Jeffrey Epstein? Alright. What did Jeffrey Epstein do? Well, I've donated money to schools, funded research.
No, Jeffrey, you know what the question is referring to.
Alright, fine. My largest accusation came from reports of me running a vast network of underage girls for sexual exploitation. The first victim came forward in 2005. She was 14. She told the Florida police that I had molested her in my Palm Beach mansion. The police got a warrant and investigated my property, where they found dozens of inappropriate photos of underage girls. I also owned a private island within the Virgin Islands, which was mocked as the pedophile islands. It was notorious for being the center of my sex trafficking ring. As a powerful billionaire, it was very easy for me to hide from the public view and commit these acts. I typically flew young girls by private jet to the island en masse. The island wasn't just for myself. I would host my friends, most notably Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, and Harvey Weinstein, all three of which have been accused of sexual assault. During my trial, my employees who worked on the island served as witnesses to the sexual abuse that took place. I was seen exiting my helicopter and then boarding my private jet with young female children. But in order to lure my victims, I used my money and influence to groom them with the promise of opportunity. My girlfriend, Ghislaine, introduced me to disadvantaged young women who I would then proceed to develop a close relationship with. I promised them opportunity. They would tell me their biggest goals and ambitions, and I would provide them with large sums of money, promise them an education, or I would help them by hiring them as my personal masseuse. They saw the opportunity I could provide for them, and would start visiting me at my estates. But as a master manipulator, I would coerce them into performing sexual acts for me, or forcefully rape them if they disagreed. There have been hundreds of girls who shared this experience. Alright, let's check out the next search term. We have why Jeffrey Epstein in the search bar. Why Jeffrey Epstein was convicted and arrested. Very briefly, I was criminally charged twice. Once in 2008, where I pleaded guilty for soliciting and procuring a minor for prostitution during a non-prosecution agreement. In this agreement, the Department of Justice was refrained from filing charges against me as long as I agreed to certain legal terms. This deal was negotiated without the victim's knowledge in an effort to silence their accusations and discredit their allegations. Unfortunately for me, a judge declared a plea deal without the victim's knowledge as illegal in 2018. But since over 80 women alleged they were assaulted or molested by me between 2001 and 2016, I was rearrested on one count of sex trafficking conspiracy and another of sex trafficking of a minor. I pleaded not guilty on both charges and was denied bail because the judge feared for the safety of myself and others. I also tried to influence witnesses by paying $350,000 to 2 people. This in itself was a crime under U.S. Code Section 1512. But only 32 days after my arrest, I was found dead. As a result, I never actually got convicted to a long-term prison sentence. Our last question. So the term is how Jeffrey Epstein, let's take a look. How did Jeffrey Epstein die? Oh boy.
Jeffrey Epstein has committed suicide in his jail cell.
Which is surprising because 3 weeks ago he was found unconscious with marks on his neck.
Take him off suicide watch. Remove his cellmate. Not have the guards look in on him.
During August of 2008, at the Metropolitan Correction Center in New York, they found me dead in a prison cell while I waited trial. They examined me medically, and the doctors determined I hung myself with a bedsheet while alone in my room. My roommate had been transferred into a different ward of the jail, so I had absolutely no one to witness my death. It's not the first time they found me in this condition. After my original indictment, I felt unconscious in my cell with a strip of bedsheet around my neck. It was a failed suicide attempt that they put me on suicide watch for only a week. This jail psychology staff then issued me to be placed in the general population with an assigned cellmate. But as I sat on suicide watch, I remember telling my psychologist that I was living a wonderful life. And besides, I'm too cowardly to subject myself to pain as far as suicide. Hello, my name is Michael Thomas, and I am a correctional officer and worked at the Metropolitan Correctional Center during Epstein's short stay. I was there for the night he was found dead, and I was supposed to be monitoring him consistently, about every 30 minutes to be precise. But to be honest, I spent my 8-hour shift browsing the internet instead. But let's be honest, this prison has serious staffing shortages, and I was seriously overworked. Anyway, it wasn't like I could have surveillanced him regardless. U.S. prosecutors have claimed his first attempt was lost to a technical error after being destroyed by accident. And after his second attempt, the one I was present for, the 2 CCTV cameras present outside his cell malfunctioned and are now under FBI examination. But let me tell you this, Epstein was just like any other high-status offender. He showed sociopathic tendencies and was very manipulative. Someone like him cannot build relationships with heads of state without understanding what people want. He groomed his victims using manipulation tactics, and during his short time in prison alone, he deceived officers and counselors into providing him with special treatment. You really think he wasn't suicidal? His direction to be taken off of suicide watch was the product of deception. Honestly, the entire night was a monumental failure on all levels of federal prison management, especially the lack of CCTV footage on both occasions. And besides, it wasn't like Epstein enjoyed his time in prison. This was a note found in his cell the night of his death. It reads, "Kept me in a locked shower stall for 1 hour. Guards sent me burnt food. Giant bugs crawling on my hands. Not fun." Hi, my name is Tova Noel, and I'm the second guard who is meant to be monitoring Epstein along with Michael Thomas. What I think Michael is not aware of is that forensic pathologists who performed Epstein's autopsy have stated it is difficult to determine his cause of death with certainty. Some of the injuries found on Epstein included deep muscle hemorrhage, burst capillaries on the face, and 3 fractures on the thyroid bone of his neck, which sits under the jaw as an anchor for the tongue. Dr. Baden, who is responsible for the autopsy, claims that having 3 fractures is extremely uncommon in hanging, and more widely seen in cases of strangulation, along with eye hemorrhaging. On the other hand, many medical professionals argue that such injuries in cases of suicide are associated with strangulation and hanging, predominantly in the cases of older men like Epstein. His death was officially marked as suicide due to undisclosed new information. However, his past suicide attempt remains a main catalyst in the decision. In terms of physical evidence found on the scene, 2 nooses were found in Epstein's cell, one of which was cut for analysis. The guard who found Epstein says he cut the noose with scissors when he found the sex offender hanging in his cell. However, In the collected evidence, there are no cut marks found in the noose that Epstein used. This sparks the question of whether or not the authorities even confiscated the correct noose. But yet, there's even more evidence in the autopsy pointing to a murder by strangulation. After hanging, due to the gravitational orientation of the body, blood tends to settle down in the lower legs. This leaves behind a maroon discoloration in the front and the back of the limbs. However, in his autopsy, it is clear his legs carry a normal, pale tone. Epstein was in a position where he, for the first time, could not buy his way out of his foreseen prison sentence. His lawyers had suggested to him that the verdict was likely not to be in his favor. For a man to commit suicide as soon as they are presented the opportunity after being taken off of suicide watch is not an uncommon occurrence. The Metropolitan Correction Center is a high-security prison. In order for someone to break into the facility, proceed to walk untouched towards Epstein's locked cell, and then strangle him with no trace is inconceivable. There existed other functioning cameras in the prison that would have been present to monitor an individual entering and exiting the prison after Epstein's death. Epstein was a billionaire who had gotten away for years with pedophilia because of his high profile. When he realized that the rest of his life would be spent rotting in a prison, he took what he thought was the most rational decision, just as he had done throughout the rest of his career. So, the facts of my case remain subject to many logical fallacies. If America spends $81 billion per year on mass incarceration, how is its management so deeply flawed that they took me, their highest profile prisoner, off of suicide watch? My suicide attempt was only a week prior to my death, and I committed it in the same manner, allegedly. According to psychiatric policy, suicidal inmates are not to be kept around items such as bedsheets, as they provide the possibility of self-harm. My death was also a day after my cellmate was transferred, leaving me alone for only 24 hours, even though part of my conditions being taken off of suicide watch was to be kept with a cellmate. How could there be such incompetence of the prison guards and coincidental camera malfunction the night I took my own life? It is an incomprehensible coincidence. My life before prison was built on my rich and powerful connections, some of which I involved into my sex trafficking ring. So were there a lot of people to be damaged had I gone to trial? Because during my trial, I would have been instructed to make statements on my association and cooperation with others during my time of prostituting minors. My friends would have quickly turned into my enemies. Considering my prison circumstances, it should have been impossible for me to commit suicide. So from Jeffrey Epstein himself, I was murdered.